Okay, good morning. We're going to do human anatomy. This is anatomy that is needed for EMT school, for becoming an EMT. It's actually very simple, the amount of anatomy you need to know. If you ever heard there's such a thing as an A&P course, anatomy and physiology, people take in college, could be a year long, just learning anatomy of the body.
Which page? 11.
The one that looks like this. 11. So we're going to do the anatomy that is critical for EMT to know every single part that I'm going to speak about. Obviously, I'm going to focus like usual. The things I focus on are things that you've got to know, all right? If I skip over it or I say, don't worry right now about it, don't worry about it, okay? For your studying, focus on what I talk about. Here we go, human body. Before we can even discuss parts of the body, we have to understand that we have descriptive words that we use to tell us where on the body we're even talking about. Before we even get to names of bones or other organs, etc. What are we talking about and where is it? So in medicine we use many descriptive words. A lot of you're going to get a lot of new vocabulary today. You're going to feel like your brain is going to explode, like learning a new language. It gets easier. We will use these words on a regular basis, and you'll get used to them. It's the same thing for everybody. Anybody that starts this course learns these words, and a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I can't do this. You can. You can, and it's difficult today, and it'll be a little bit easier tomorrow and the next day, and you'll see. Soon these words will be, you know, like mamalushim to you. It'll be okay. But it's going to take time. Certain words that we use, and the way we define these words is by chopping the body, so to speak, with an imaginary line, okay? So in the first one here, we're going to chop the body in half. Each time we're going to chop the body in half. But here we're going down from the center of the head, down through the ears, down through the axle, the shoulders, and straight down like that. And we always end up with two parts, or two halves. Now, in simple English, if we would cut a body like that, and we would have these two halves, we would just say, this is the front, and this is the back, right? Simple English. In medicine, we don't use these words. We don't use front and back. So the first two words I'm going to introduce to you today are anterior, which means front, and posterior, which means back. Again, today's going to be about learning words, not so much understanding them. How we use them, we're going to get into it. But for now, the front of the body, or the front of the organ, or the front of any body part is known as its anterior, and its back is called the posterior. Very good. The next cut, you see how we cut the body here, is where we cut the knife now right down the center of the nose, from the top of the head, straight down the middle. Okay? We are going to have two parts, right? Now, in English, we would call these two parts the left and the right. Guess what we call them in medicine? The left and the right. Okay? We're going to actually use these terms, left and right, and we're going to use them very often. The only problem is which left and which right. Because as you know, when you look at me and I raise my right hand, what side are you seeing? It's on your left. So we have to understand, and I'm going to explain to you soon, how every single medical professional is talking about the same left and the same right at all times. Has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with me, nothing to do with where you're standing, what you're looking at. So we're going to explain how whenever they say place the right lung or the whatever, how do you know which one? How do you know which is the right arm, the left arm? Who said? I'm going to explain. Also, when we cut this line down the middle, the name itself of the line we need to understand. This is called the midline. Mid, from the word middle, right? So it's a midline, it cuts the body straight down the middle. So this is known as the midline, and we're going to understand later why we need to know that.
And both of them it's called midline?
No, just this one. Just when you cut straight down
We're talking about the center photo.
the middle picture, right? Now, there's two other times right now that I want to introduce the word mid. Mid is used a lot in medicine, but there are two times here that I want to introduce it. If we draw a line from the middle of this bone is called the clavicle. It's also known as the collarbone. It goes from the shoulder to the middle here to the sternum. We'll get to it. It's called the clavicle. If we draw a line from the middle of the clavicle all the way down, this would be called the mid-clavicular line. Mid-clavicular. It's just the way that you pronounce mid-clavicle. Mid-clavicular line. It's also known as the nipple line, right? Because that's right where you're going to cross when you go down. And we're going to use this space and this line again later on. One more mid that I want to bring is mid-axillary. Now the axillary is the medical term for the armpit. Right in the middle there. It's called the axillary. Mid-axillary is a line that starts here and goes all the way down. Again, we're going to use these words. So now I want to introduce them because I introduced midline. You should know that it can be used in other places also. Mid-clavicular. Alright? How many mid-clavicular lines does a person have? Two. How many mid-axillary lines? Two. But how many midlines?
One.
Only one. Right? So it has nothing to do with, you know, right. It has to do with where we're making this midline. And I'm giving you three examples here. Okay, the last cut that we're going to cut the body is over here. In basic plain English, we would say now we have two halves. One is the top and one is the bottom. Fantastic. Only in medicine we don't use these words. Okay? Medicine, we're going to say that anything that is above a certain point, and you can adjust the point to wherever you want. I'll explain this a little more detail later. But for now, we're saying anything that is above this cut is going to be called superior, and anything that is below the cut is going to be called inferior. Okay? So we have a bunch already, on one slide, we have a bunch of new words that we need to understand. Alright? We will go over them and talk about them more. Alright? So these are the planes of the body. Alright, some more new words that we need to know. Right? First thing I want to explain is the position that this patient is standing. Okay? This position is very important to us. This is called the anatomical position. Look how he's standing. His feet are on the floor, regular, but look how the arms and the hands are. Very important you understand this. The thumbs are the furthest thing away from the body. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. Every single patient that we describe, whether you're talking to another EMT, whether you're talking to a paramedic, whether you're talking to a nurse, a doctor, it doesn't matter. We always describe the patient as if the patient is in the anatomical position. Doesn't matter how you found him, but when we describe him, so for example, you see over here that this is the right and this is the left. Now from where you're standing,
It's the left.
It's wrong, right? Because it doesn't matter where you're standing. It's not even where he's standing. He could be sitting curled up in a ball with this foot by this ear.
So
Doesn't matter.
quarter to that.
You have to unravel him in your head, put him in this position in your head, and then say, oh, so it was this arm that's broken. Even though you saw it sticking out over here, doesn't matter.
Where does it say the name?
Then the next slide or two. We'll get to it. Okay? So understand this. Understand this, and when I teach you some more words, every time we say something is anterior, something is posterior, something is inferior, superior, and the new words we're going to learn now, always referring to the patient in anatomical position. Fantastic. So,
Facing right.
anatomical means the way the body's supposed to be. That's
where the word comes
from anatomy. Anatomy. The way of the body. So again, here you have the midline. You see your midline? Right? We spoke about that word. Here's the right and big and the left. So you understand that everything, the midline is what causes there to be a right and a left. Without a midline, there's no right and left. It's just a body, right? So there's imaginary line. In that imaginary line, we have a right side of it and we have a left side of it. Remember,
Where does it matter if the hands on?
it matters because again, you could be talking about a patient who is sitting now in Tinkawing, Nebraska, and you cannot see the patient, but you need to know when you're explaining somebody what's wrong with the patient, where's the injury, where's the problem. So we always go with the patient in the anatomical position. You'll see soon as we start to use it. Okay, two new words. Lateral and medial. Medial is very simple. You see the first three letters say med. Med is the same as mid. So medial means close to the midline. As closer to the midline you get is more medial. So what's more medial? Something over here or something over here? Right, the one that's closer to the midline. Now you understand, when you see the patient, they're not going to have a big black line down the middle, but you know that this is the midline, this is further away from the midline, this is closer to the midline. It's easy.
What is the midline called? Not the other. Not the
Don't worry about it.
The other line.
Not important for now. Okay? The opposite of medial is lateral. Lateral means to the side, or a better definition, away from the midline. So here's a famous test question that you always get. What is the most lateral part of the body? The thumbs is the most lateral. What if I put my thumbs, you come there and the patient has his thumbs as a...
The lateral position.
Does it matter? No. Does it matter? Right? Are his thumbs on the midline? Yeah? But where are they? Most lateral part of the body. Because, why? Because the patient must always be imagined to be in the anatomical position. When we describe something, right?
Describe the thumbs, describe this, describe the middle.
Fine, that's different. But when I'm asking you, what is the most lateral part of the body?
Why the thumbs?
Because they're the furthest away from the midline.
Because it's anatomical position.
What else is further from the midline?
That's it.
Okay, so that's the most lateral part of the body. So know these two words now, lateral and medial. Medial means close to the midline. Lateral means left or right.
Yeah.
Left or right, but away from the midline.
But it's just thumbs.
Okay, next two words we already saw. Superior means up or above. Inferior means below. Good, so we know these two words. All right. two new ones. All right, proximal and distal. Not so hard. Distal, you could think of the word distance. Distance. Distal means far away. You ever heard there's a word in English called in proximity? It's an English word. In proximity. I'm in proximity. What does it mean? Close. Yeah. So they're not so hard. They're not so difficult. All right. In Spanish, close is proximal. So it really comes from the Latin that this word comes from. So proximal and distal. Okay? Proximal and distal. These words are used a lot in medicine. Okay? And what we're saying is, this is called the trunk of the body. The abdomen and the chest. This is called the trunk. You may want to take a note of that.
Why is it called
The trunk.
What's the definition? Most shit goes in there.
Not every word.
Who made those words?
What?
Who made those words? I mean, why is it?
Medicine. I don't know. It's been for years like this. Okay? So proximal and distal means what is closer to the trunk of the body and what is further away. So I have a class going on now that seems to have a couple of guys have a hard time with understanding proximal and distal when it comes to the elbow and the shoulder. Okay, so let me explain it now so you should understand. What is closer to this part of the body? The shoulder or the elbow?
Shoulder.
Shoulder. Shoulder's attached to it. Right? So the shoulder is more proximal than the elbow. But what if they ask you like this? What is more proximal, the elbow or the wrist?
Oh.
The elbow. So now the elbow goes, so you see, what I explained to them was that it depends on where's your focus.
Relevant.
Are you asking me, it's always to connect, it's always to the trunk, but the question is, compared to what? All right? So, I'll give you an example. There's a bone here called the femur bone. We'll see it soon. All right? Femur bone. In the femur bone itself, in one bone, I have up here, right at the top of the femur, I have the proximal femur. Why?
Close.
Right? And down here, I have the distal femur. It's the same bone.
Proximal distal is always referring to the trunk.
Always referring to the trunk, but I can use anything as my
Where is the
focus.
trunk bone in the middle?
The trunk is the abdomen and the chest, yeah. Okay? We'll get to it.
What is the wrist?
So what is medial and
Trunk.
distal?
What was the wrist?
Sorry?
How different medial and proximal? That is the entire body, medial.
Wrist is the elbow.
Yeah. Not right over left, to the midline. In or
Elbow
out.
will do, ja, so muss weg.
In or out. Because it could be to either side, it would still be lateral. Okay? So it's very different. Medial and lateral is very different from proximal and distal. Okay?
But how, when it's meaning just one thing, how I know,
Maybe this means for a break?
No. What side?
how we know from one thing if it's medial or lateral? Just we imagining? Here,
Oh, if it's
medial
closer. if
or
it's
lateral?
closer.
Oh, that's
Of what?
part of the trunk, so you'll never use, you won't use that
I'm
word.
using just for the midline.
To the midline, yeah.
Oh, so,
This is medial lateral.
oh, you have, so usually it's compared to
Very
something.
something.
Yeah. Okay?
What is in distal and lateral? Both are away.
No, distal is far.
Distal closer to the...
Distal just means far, lateral means away from the midline.
Proximal means closer.
Yeah. Okay? You'll get used to them. These two, I wouldn't worry about too much. They're not used very much in medicine anymore. But ventral is another word for anterior or front. It's not used much. The dorsal is used in animal, like the top fin of a fish, a shark. is called the dorsal fin. We hardly use it in medicine, so I wouldn't worry about it too much, okay? These words that you must know.
Which ones?
The ones I spoke about. All right, couple more words that you need to know. Flexion and extension. So, when you open something out, you are extending. When you bring it up like this, you are flexing. Okay, or flexion, extension. All right, same thing goes for the knee. All right, when you extend out, extension. When you bring the knee up towards the belly,
Extension.
flexion.
Extension and flexion.
Okay? These two words I wouldn't worry about too much, but abduct means to take away, to abduct, right? Like in English, someone gets abducted, it means bring away from the body. And the opposite of abduct is adduct. You hardly see these words used anymore, this word. But
Flexion, extension.
yes, they're used, yes. All right. Now we explained a little bit about the positioning of the body, the anatomical position, how we describe various parts of the body. Now we need to understand two things. Every time we see a patient, we're going to find them in one of many different positions. We have to describe two things on our ACR or our PCR. One is, how was the patient found? In what position were they found? And the second one is, how did we transport them to the hospital? These two are not the same. Okay? So we may have found them sitting in the bathroom, right? But we're certainly not going to transport them sitting in the bathroom, right? We're going to... So we need to be able to describe how they're found and how we transported them. The good news is we use the same words to describe both. Alright? Let me go through now some of the famous positions that we talk about in EMS. Okay? We'll start with this one. Okay? This is a patient who was found laying on her back. Okay? Laying on her back, we don't say laying on the back, we say one word, supine. Supine rhymes with spine, so they're on the spine, supine on the spine. And we find many patients like this. Maybe they're in bed, maybe they're in the road, maybe they're in the snow, who knows? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You find a patient that is in this position, laying on their back.
Whatever it is, no difference where it is.
No.
Supine.
Supine. Again, could be in bed, could be on the floor, could be in the mikveh, could be in the snow. Doesn't matter.
Position.
It's the position you found him. You walked on scene, and boom, this is how the patient was found. So one of the first things you're going to write on your ACR, how you found the patient. Okay? Supine. How easy? That's easy, right?
In all ACR and PCR has to be filled out with those names we are mentioning,
Yes.
You can't write that he was laying on the side.
Right. It would look very unprofessional. People will look at you like,
Who was the teacher?
alright? Supine. Even in Williamsburg they use these words, alright? Alright. The opposite of supine is this one up here. It's called prone. 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 Sorry, we say for a joke, prone is called sucking on the concrete. Okay? Alright? It's not a very pleasant position to be found in. You can imagine what type of people are found like this, alright? A lot of drunks, a lot of people who were in fights, overdoses, all this good stuff, okay? A lot of these people are found like this. So this is called, but you can also have people that are not feeling well in this position, right? With a weichbeltag, with stomach pains, with all sorts of things. Okay? So, the opposite of supine is?
Prone.
Prone. These are words you gotta know, you gotta...
Prone is face down, line is face up.
Face up. Good.
Shot.
Any seminar prone?
Yeah, after we stop recording. Down here, we have something called the shock position. Here we have the shock position. Now, given by its name, shock position, we're going to later on, I think even today, learn all about shock, what it is, what it means, what's going on. So let's just say for now, somebody who is in shock will be put in the shock position. What's the position? Well, it's pretty much supine with one change.
Elevated.
You elevate the legs. You take your trauma bag, your jump bag, whatever you got, or some of the fancy stretchers now, the end can go up. It's very nice. And you have a shock position.
So that's not how you find the patient, that's the way.
This is not how you find it typically, unless you come on scene and there's somebody who says, I'm a nurse, or I'm a whatever, and I put the patient like this. Yes, so sometimes.
Front legs would just be on steps, let's say.
Yeah,
Legs
legs
could also fine. If I find him with his legs up just by accident.
No, if it's by accident, it's supine. But if somebody tells you, you know, I'm a nurse, or I'm a, whatever, I took first aid for day camps or something, and I know that this patient, and I put him in this position, then it's shock position, okay? Okay, let's do this one. Now this one really is not a great picture. I would like to get a better picture one day. There are two types of Fowlers. Two types. There is the Fowler's position, which is body straight up, like on a bed or the back of the bed, with the legs straight out on the bed. That's Fowler's position. There is another position called semi-Fowlers. Semi-Fowlers is where the head is not straight up at 90 degrees, but the head is laying back halfway, 45 degrees. Okay? So Fowlers and semi-Fowlers. These are the most common ways that we transport patients. Okay? They're comfortable. The bed, the back of the bed goes all the way up, and then it goes down to pretty much any semi-Fowler's position that you want, okay?
The foul is more the back, not the knees.
It's that the back is straight and the legs are
Like
straight out.
Like sit up.
It's like sitting, but it's not sitting. Sitting is what you're doing now. On the stretcher, you can't sit. You can come into the house, the patient is standing, we say standing. The patient is sitting, we say sitting. Okay? But if they're in bed and they're propped up with 6 pillows and their legs are straight out and their body is straight up, then they're in Fowlers. They did it by themselves. Okay? So there's Fowlers and there's semi-Fowlers. Okay? If they're laying in bed, regular, then you could just say found laying in bed. That's okay also.
That would be something.
No, if they're supine, then yeah, but it's unlikely that they're supine. If they're just not feeling well, they'll probably be one side or the other side, curled up a little bit. It's unlikely they're going to be perfectly
What
supine.
is the definition of foul?
It's just a name. And the last one is the recovery position. Recovery position has another name, so does shock. I think I'll have it on the next slide. Recovery position usually means that they're laying on their left side. Okay, and I have another slide you're going to see now. So here's a quick review of all the things. Prone, face down. Supine, face up. Fowlers, seated, but it doesn't really mean seated in a chair, just so you remember. Okay, Trendelenburg. This is the name of the shock position. You need to know both words. They could use it on tests. Okay?
Can you use it on that?
Yeah.
Trendelenburg is the head down, no?
Trendelenburg means the shock position.
Feet elevated.
Feet elevated. Okay? And recovery, this you must know. Left lateral recumbent position.
That name below.
Always, yes, always on the test. Always.
Not so easy.
So underline it or make a highlight, left lateral recumbent position.
But that's also.
Lateral means on the side. Lateral, you know what lateral means. Medial lateral.
Oh, right.
To the side.
So
Let's
then,
look for the word.
That's a position that you're putting someone into.
Yes.
Not found.
Sometimes they're found.
But it's not a right-sided position? Only left side.
Okay, when we transport them, we always want to put them on the left side. I'll explain why later. But they could be on the left or the right, sure.
And both are named recovery?
Yeah.
There's no name for right position.
Yeah, also recovery.
So it doesn't mean left.
Recovery is also in trend downward position.
No.
It's a different thing.
No.
I don't see the blue dot in recovery.
Oh, right. Okay, you're right. Should be over here.
what?
That's a nice explanation.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Here's the way you spell anatomical, by the way. Anatomic. Anatomical.
It's in the book.
Okay. Good. All right. Now we're going to, these are the positions that we need to be familiar with. Now we're going to move into the different systems of the body. Okay? Here we go. Here we go. The first one we're going to talk about is the skeletal system. Skeletal system contains all the bones in the body. There are 206 bones. And you do not have to learn all those names, but there are some that you must be familiar with, and I will point those out as we're moving along. Okay? So you must know those. Why do we have bones? So there's a number of things. First of all, they produce red blood cells, which is a major part of blood. So bones produce blood. Number two, they allow the muscle to sit on something so that we don't look like a plate of gala, okay? Because that's how we would look if we didn't have bones, right? Our muscle would just shake around, okay, like jello. So we need to,
Bones. I mean the bones.
we need the bones.
Gala also needs bones.
That's to make it. So, in order for movement and motion and joints to work, we also need the bones to be attached. So these are some of the reasons for having bones. Okay, I'm going to tell you the critical, most important bones that you must know for this course. When I speak about them, you must underline them, circle them, learn them. Okay? Number one, the lower jaw. The lower jaw. The lower jaw is called the mandible. Okay, so that's why you're going to get the updated books.
Or we can find it here.
It's in your textbook. Okay. The lower jaw.
What is the lower?
The lower jaw is called the mandible. All right, and it is the only moving bone in your head. The only part of your head that moves is the mandible. Okay, all the other bones are fixed still. Okay, so again, the lower jaw that has your lower teeth and your chin and everything is called the mandible. The upper jaw, this does not move, has your upper gums and upper teeth, is called the maxilla. Maxilla. Remember, the armpit is called the axilla, and the upper jaw is called the maxilla. Different. Okay? For now, these are the two bones I want you to remember. We'll get to more later. Maxilla, mandible. You have to know which one is which.
Upper, lower.
Yeah. I'm going to point out one more bone. And that's right here. It's called the mastoid process. This is a bone that's right behind your ear. Right behind the ear. And I'll get back to it later why you want to know that, but for now, these are the two main bones that you need to know.
That one is the center?
The center is the occiput.
No, the mass
No, it's behind the ear.
on the side.
Yeah, right behind. Okay? Okay. This is a picture of the skull. This is interesting. If you turn the skull upside down, there's a large hole over here. It's actually called the large hole in Latin. You don't need to know, it's called the foramen magnum, means the large hole. And that's where the spinal column attaches up into the brain. Okay? So that is how it attaches. You see over here, you see how it goes up, the spinal column, the spinal cord goes up into the brain. Brain sends messages down, we'll talk about it soon. But the hole underneath of the head is all closed and fused together. Just this one large hole is the only opening underneath the head, in the neck. Everything else is closed up.
It's called?
Foramen magnum. You will not be tested on that one. Okay? Okay. I wouldn't worry about the stuff here yet, so let's move on. Alright, the spinal column. We're going to talk about the spine many times throughout the course. There's a lot of information that you need for the spine. So we're going to start now. And I'm going to build up on it as each time we talk about the spine. For now, let's learn one thing. That the spine is built of 33 vertebrae. Each one of these bones is called vertebrae. The Lashon Rabbim, the plural is vertebrae. One would be a vertebra. But we just usually call them vertebrae. There are how many? 33. The 33 are divided into 5 sections, and I will give you the sections and the breakdown a little bit later on. But for now, that's good enough. All right, really, really important slide here. So, from 12 of the vertebrae in the back, come around and make the rib cage. Okay? So you see the section here called the thoracic section. There are 12 from about here to here. Okay? There are 12. And each one comes around and becomes one of the ribs. You understand? Each rib comes from the vertebrae in the back and comes around and protects the chest. Purpose of the ribs, like many bones, is to protect organs that are found underneath. Okay, this is the purpose of many of our bones, to protect organs. And there are 12 sets of ribs. Okay? Now,
12 vertebrae.
12 vertebrae, 12 sets of ribs. Okay?
That section.
Now, this bone is a very important bone for all the EMTs. This bone is called the sternum, right in the middle of the chest. If you touch it on yourself, you can feel it. It's a hard bone. Okay, it's right in the center of the chest.
It's in the front or in the back?
Front. Anterior. This is anterior, this is posterior. Posterior, you have the spinal column. Anterior, you have the vertebrae. Now, the sternum, sorry. The sternum is extremely important because this is the location for doing CPR. All right? This is the location for doing CPR. CPR is performed on the sternum. We'll see later that underneath, on each side, are the lungs, and right in the middle here is the heart. So the heart is in effect right under the sternum. The sternum is the place where you will put your hand to do CPR. The very bottom of the sternum is this small piece here, and it looks like a hook. It's like a pointy hook. You must not do CPR at the bottom of the sternum. Okay, you must not do CPR at the bottom. We'll get into CPR stuff next week. But this is called the xiphoid process. Xiphoid with an X. X-I-P-H-O-I-D. The xiphoid process. We have to be careful during CPR not to do CPR on the xiphoid process. You can break off and can rupture the liver. Test questions. Alright?
With what? That you cannot do it.
That you cannot do CPR compressions over the xiphoid process.
You find that every person is back or left.
No, you always want to be in the middle of the sternum. Middle to the lower half of the sternum. Okay? Okay, that's this for now, okay? So, here are your 5 sections. Here are your 5 sections. You need to know these names. We will go over them again a couple more times, but you have to know them. So, the one that goes right into, from the brain to the, just past the neck is called the cervical. This is the most dangerous, the most serious if there's an injury over there. Then comes the thoracic. Thorax means the chest, the upper chest, thoracic. Next we have the lower back, the lumbar. Anybody that drives a decent car will have heard of lumbar support, right? That's the bump that comes out in the back of the car, in the drive, yeah?
See.
So, that's lumbar support. Why is it called lumbar support? The supports your lumbar. Now you see where the word comes from. Okay?
Is the front or the
No, it's the end.
The back.
This is posterior.
Posterior.
Remember, the spinal column is only
Yeah, yeah.
in the posterior
It's
part of the
called
patient.
the cervical what? Cervical,
Cervical nerves? Why is there a nerve?
cervical not nerves. Cervical.
This is the parts of the spine. These are the cervical vertebrae, the thoracic vertebrae, the lumbar. And then we have these two at the bottom called the sacrum and the
You want to
coccyx.
show me vertebrae?
Spell here.
Oh, I got it.
Sacrum and coccyx. Alright? Again, I'll give you the numbers that you can write next to these, just so you have them. You'll get it again later. 7, 12, 5, 5, 4.
Where? Starting from where?
Starting from top to bottom. 7,
7 cervical,
12 thoracic,
5 lumbar,
5, 5, 4. You will be tested on this over and over and over.
What's the deal?
7, 12, 5, 5, 4.
These are the vertebrae.
These are, if you add up those numbers,
Equals 33.
you should, unless I took some off for tax. Yes, should equal 33.
7.
7, 12, 5, 5, 4. Should equal 33.
Yes.
And we're going to do this again, don't worry. You're going to see this is the second time, it's going to be a third and a fourth. Okay, we're going to do this over a few times.
So 7 on what? Of the
cervical.
Here, there are 7 vertebrae in the cervical section. There are 12 in the
Thoracic.
thoracic section.
5
5 on the longer.
5 6 or 5 the cut.
5, 5, 4.
How does it sound for that again?
Coccyx. Okay? Just to explain something to you quickly, we'll talk about head and spine injuries another night. Day. The higher up the injury, the bigger problems the patient's going to have. Okay? The more severe. Yes, the more superior. Very good. Okay? So this is from superior to inferior. Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacrum, coccyx. Okay? Good. Here's the thorax, showing you now something. Again, I don't think you'll be tested on this in EMT school, but the first 7 ribs actually attach to the sternum itself. The first 7. ribs 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 attached to rib 7. You see that?
Yeah.
See? So these are called true ribs, these are called false ribs. Rib 12 does not attach. They're called floating ribs. Again, not something you'll be tested
This
on.
is the front, interior.
This is anterior, yes. They all start off the same in the back. They all leave the thoracic vertebrae and they come around. Okay? Inside the thorax we have the heart, the lungs, the esophagus, trachea, right? The pipes, and the great vessels. Who can tell me names of great vessels?
Vena cava.
Vena cava,
Aorta.
nearly aorta. Very good. Very good. All right, so if somebody asks you to draw a picture of the abdomen, the belly, that's what I would draw. That's how we draw a belly in medicine, okay? And we refer to everything in the belly by this focus point. Anyone know what that is? What do you think the center of the belly is? No, the belly button, the umbilicus. Okay? That is the center of the belly. All right? We call it the umbilicus, or the navel. Sometimes also a word is used. We'll get to it. But for now, understand this, that if you split the belly, the abdomen, into 4, the cuts this way and this way are going through the umbilicus. Okay? The umbilicus. What we did was create 4 spaces. And everything about the belly is described as which one of these 4 quadrants, that's the official word, quadrants. Quad is from the word 4, quad, 4. Which one of the quadrants are we talking about?
Upper right.
Right. So remember, which side of it is this?
Right, superior.
This is the right. This is the left. Very good. There are certain body parts, organs, that you are expected to know which one of these quadrants they fit into. So it's not hard. Just follow with me and you'll get it. This is called the RUQ, for short, the RUQ. There's a lot of these acronyms, Russian Tavison, that we use in medicine. The RUQ means the right upper quadrant. The most important thing for you to remember is the liver. It's found in
RUQ.
Very good, the liver. Don't forget, this is a test question forever.
That's what.
Where's the liver?
RUQ.
Somebody's complaining of pain in their right upper quadrant. Which organ do you think's affected? Could go either way. They can ask it either way. But it'll be always test questions. Always. Okay? Right lower quadrant, that's where your appendix is. Not so important.
That was the colon.
Okay? Left upper quadrant. The main thing you need to know that you'll be tested on is the spleen. Okay? Very common, you have car accidents, the driver sitting in the driver's seat, driving, and he gets a T-bone accident. Which organ is affected first? Why?
It's in the left upper quadrant.
Okay, it's the left upper quadrant,
What
and
is the spleen in the body?
and where's the driver sitting?
The left of the car.
Left of the car, and the spleen is the left of the thing, and if he's T-boned,
Yeah, this is-
That's spleen.
spleen, so that's where it's located, in the left upper quadrant, no left.
What is this?
We'll get to it. The left lower quadrant, doesn't really matter. Now the colon or the intestine are sort of found everywhere, so they're not going to test you on that. All right? So the liver, the gallbladder, by the way, the gallbladder is right under the liver, so it's together. If they were to ask you about the gallbladder, it's together with the liver, all right? So liver and the gallbladder together in the right upper, the spleen, and the stomach is in the left, the left upper. Now let me just go back to why, if somebody feels nauseous and they're conscious, unconscious, we think they're going to vomit, why we place them in the left lateral recumbent position. Now I want to address that. Since the stomach is where? On the left, and we put them with the left side down, it's more difficult for them to vomit if the left side is down. If the left side is up, then it's a much easier path for the stomach to empty its contents. We don't want patients to vomit. This is never a good day at the office. Okay? Not for you, not for the cleanup people, which may be you, and certainly not for the patient. Notice how they're third. Right? All right?
Small question, where does this whole part start? This
From
here?
here.
No.
No.
Oh, it's not.
No. It's from the diaphragm, but I haven't really shown you where that is yet. So for now, you imagine it as being just above the umbilicus to just below the umbilicus, like 2 inches above, 2 inches below.
That's a
That's
trunk.
also,
What
No.
are the initials from IUQ?
Trunk is in the belly.
What?
The initials from IUQ.
Right upper quadrant.
RUQ.
RUQ. Yeah.
Right upper quadrant. LUQ, left upper quadrant.
You use all the other side.
Usually these two.
Only these two?
Usually. But you could. If your patient has this, right lower quadrant pain, then I would write patient complaining of RLQ pain. That's it. Times how many hours? Sure. Absolutely. I use them all. Clear?
LOQ.
Okay, but I wouldn't learn these for the test. For the test, they're going to spell out the whole word. Okay?
Initials.
Okay. Let me talk about the pancreas for a minute. We're going to do a lecture way, way later on in course about the pancreas and about diabetes, etc., etc. Right now, I want you to know one thing. That the job of the pancreas, take a note on it, because I don't have it in my notes till later. The job of the pancreas is to produce insulin. That's all you need to know right now. I'll do a whole lecture on it.
Insulin?
Insulin sugar.
No. Just write the words. The job of the pancreas is to produce insulin. Okay? I'll get to it more later. For now, that's all I want to say. The pancreas is telling you where it is. It's not so important. The bladder, the kidneys. Kidneys, good to know where the kidneys are. The kidneys you can find in the posterior aspect of the patient, about the level of the umbilicus, but in the back. Okay? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, the pelvis. Kidneys in the back. Let's talk about the pelvis. Now, the anatomy of the pelvis, they're not going to test you on very much. Okay? It's not something that they really get into all the bones and the nitty-gritty of what's going on here. What I want you to understand, and I want you to take home message about the pelvis, is that look at the size of these pipes that are running along the pelvis. First of all, the pelvis are the hips. Okay, in simple word, we call it pelvis. This is the aorta. Okay, the aorta goes from the left ventricle, it arches over, goes all the way through the thorax, through the abdomen, until here. That's the aorta. So that is a huge, huge pipe. Yes, it's getting smaller as it's going down, but it's still the largest artery of the body. So this is a huge artery. This aorta splits here and now becomes known as the iliac arteries, which again, you won't be tested on. What I want you to understand is, if you ever hear that there's a call for an elderly with a possible hip fracture or pelvic dislocation or whatever, understand that these are always very serious calls. The pelvis has so much open empty space that a person could bleed to death without you seeing one drop of blood. All right? So hip fractures, especially in the elderly, are extremely important calls and must be taken very, very seriously. All right? Listen, every call has to be taken seriously. But if a young kid, 20-year-old, breaks his bone, gets a broken leg playing basketball, chance of him dying from it, not too high, right? But an elderly that falls, and now his hip is rotated out, or in, or you don't know, but he can't move, and he can't walk, and he's laying on the floor, probably supine when you find him. You've always got to consider, was one of these arteries affected? Okay? And if it was, you're going to need to move quick. So, how do we deal with it, whatever? But right now, more than the anatomy, I just want to bring this to hips. The whole thing. This is an anterior view. Okay? Alright, some words that we gotta know. So, we don't... Oh, first let me explain, because probably none of you are native English speakers. So let me just explain English, and then we'll go to medicine. This, in English, is called the leg. L-E-G, leg. I know it's a difficult word. I know. The foot is just this, where you put your shoe on. Okay? Let's understand this from today on. I know why this is difficult, but it is. I've done this before. This is called the leg, and this part that the shoe covers is called the foot. Only that is the foot. Okay? All this is the leg. Now that's just English. Now we'll get to, see, leg. Okay? Now, we'll get to medicine now. Okay. The largest, strongest bone in the body is found between the hip and the knee, and it's called the femur bone. Okay? Again, the largest, strongest bone in the body is the femur bone. Yes, it's in the upper leg, okay? But we can just refer to it as the femur bone, okay? By the way, the entire thing from the hip to the foot, we call the lower extremities, okay? Both, left, right, lower extremities, and obviously the arms are going to be known as the upper extremities. Okay? Extremity just means something to the outside of the body, not part of the trunk. So these are the extremities. So now we split the trunk, the body into head, trunk, and extremities. That's it. There's nothing else. Right? Simple.
Again?
You have the head, you have the trunk, you have the extremities.
The pelvic is part of the...
Part of the lower extremity. Okay?
Oh, the pelvic is still part of the trunk.
Yeah. Okay? Because it's not part of the trunk. Trunk ends at the abdomen. Okay? So again, let's recap. We learned one bone here, and we got to know this bone. The name is the femur. Goes from here till the knee.
Strongest bone.
Strongest, longest bone in the body.
From the hip till the knee.
Yes. Now, the knee has two parts. Okay? The knee itself is a joint. Therefore, it doesn't exist. You can't put it on a plate and say, here's a knee. There's no such thing. The knee is a joint, just like an elbow. Okay? Bring me an elbow. You can't. It doesn't exist. Okay? A joint is where two bones come together to be able to move. So the knee is a joint, but the knee is special that there's also a bone covering the joint. Most joints don't have this. Okay? The knee does. So when everybody says the knee, they're talking about really the knee bone, the knee cap, and it covers the knee joint. But we don't call it the knee. It has a name, and it's called the patella. Okay? So the patella is the guy that served me in 7-Eleven. But it's also, I'm just joking. It's really it's the knee. The kneecap is known as the patella. I did over an hour without a joke. It's okay. Alright.
So the joint is called the knee and the cap is called patella.
Very good. Very good. Now, the way we have now from the knee to the ankle, which also the ankle doesn't really exist, it's a joint, right? There's no ankle. It's a joint where bones come together. We have two bones. We have a larger bone and a smaller, skinnier bone. Yes, you must know these names. The larger bone is called the tibia, and the small, skinnier one is called the fibula. Now I know you want to know, so I'm going to answer you. Which is more medial, the tibia or the fibula? Which is more medial?
What's me?
What's medial? No one said that. Very good. The tibia is more medial, and the fibula is more lateral. Lateral. It's okay. We're using the words that we just learned in the last hour and a half.
But he's referring to the leg, only to the lower part, so not the whole, the thigh would be part of the leg, or no?
Wait. The thigh is part of the leg, but it's all lower extremity. But here we can say that where the femur is could be known as the thigh, and where the tib fib is could be known as the leg. But the whole thing is the leg. Now we call the tib fib together the tib fib.
That's bigger than the femur?
No. Femur is the longest, strongest bone in the body.
So that's only the bottom, whatever.
Yeah, from the knee to the ankle. Now we call them together the tib fib. Tib fib.
Where's the over here?
Tib is the first three letters of this word, and fib. I'll tell you why we say them together. Because one thing we don't have on an ambulance is an X-ray machine. So when we come and we see somebody on the basketball court, and they're holding their leg, and they're screaming in agony, and they've got a grapefruit-sized growth, swelling, right? We don't know which one it is. Nobody knows. You know who knows? The guy that does the X-ray, because he's the first one that sees it. We can't know from looking at an injury whether it's an injury to the tibia or to the fibula. So in EMS we call it the tib fib.
So it's the same bone, but it's
No, it's two separate bones.
They're doing the same thing.
They're next to each other. Yeah?
Fibula is the smallest.
The fibula.
Is the smallest.
Small, skinny one. Lateral.
This is the
And the
knee.
tibia is medial, fatter, thicker, heavier.
Largest.
Okay? Good. Now let's go down to the ankle. So You don't, I always teach this, but I don't think you have to go too crazy over these bones. The ankle's made up of tarsals, the foot is made of metatarsals, and the toes and the fingers in the hand are made of phalanges. I don't believe that they're going to bother you in EMT school too much for this. Okay? But you must know the femur, the patella, the tib fin. You must.
Give us one example of a question where they can ask
I
about
don't know right now. Just know that. Name the bones in the lower leg. That would be a question.
We usually find it.
Tip fit. I answered tip fit.
That would be the answer. Okay?
Exactly.
Which of the following is not a bone of the leg? Femur, tibia, banana, fibula. I don't know what the question
But they
is.
call the upper leg the thigh. They also call leg.
Look. Or they'll just say lower extremity.
Most of the whole.
Here's a nice picture of the foot. This is the foot. This, just this. Okay? The largest tarsal, if you're interested, the largest tarsal is called the calcaneus. I've seen a question on this, but not too exciting. It's called the calcaneus. It's the largest tarsal, and it is your heel bone.
How does it pass?
Tarsal are the name of the bones here, the 7 bones that make the foot. And then smaller ones are called metatarsals. So it goes tarsal, metatarsal, and these are phalanges.
These bones connected with the tip fit.
Yes, the calcaneus.
With both bones, the fibula and the tibia.
Yes.
See, this all connects to the tarsals. Okay.
So these bones
All right. I wouldn't worry about this too much. We'll get to more stuff later. Okay. This whole thing is called an arm. A-R-M. See, even I can spell it. Arm. The hand is only from the wrist till the fingers. We got this?
Yes.
I'm not making fun, I mean this seriously. Arm. Yes, I know.
So the hand is still the wrist.
From the wrist.
From the wrist.
From the wrist.
Yeah.
From the wrist.
And of that,
And then it's the arm. The whole thing is the arm. Okay? Arm. Then we have an elbow. We can say forearm, wrist, and hand. No, I need more. All right. So let's talk about the bones that you must know. Okay? The bones that you must know. So, the longest bone in the arm is called the humerus. Humerus, spelled with an H. H-U. Humerus. And that's where the word, the funny bone, comes from. Because humerus means funny. So, it's, that's why it's called.
similar to the femur.
Similar idea, it's the largest bone in the arm, but not in the body. Femur is way bigger. Stronger. Okay, so this is the humerus, and it's, you have here the elbow. The elbow is a joint connection, but there's no elbow bone. All right, when you feel here, I'll explain what you feel in a minute.
Elbow's not carried.
It is and it isn't. It's a joint like the knee, but there's no cap.
Same with the other leg, with different words.
Yeah, this is how God made people. It should be similar, same. Yeah, all the extremities, a similar setup. Okay, so humerus, and we split down here into 2 bones. Okay, very, very important. The larger one is called the radius, and the smaller one is called the ulna, U-L-N-A, ulna. Now, very important question. I'm going to ask you.
1 second, smaller is how?
Ulna, U-L-N-A,
Where is it? Say?
ulna. Here, radius and ulna. Now, I'm going to tell you a fact, and then I'm going to ask you a question. The radius is always found on the thumb side of the body. So which is more medial, the radius or the ulna?
Ulna.
Everybody agree? The radius is always on the thumb side of the arm. So whichever way the arm is, the radius is together with the thumb. My question is, which is more medial, the radius or the ulna?
Ulna.
The ulna, very good. Why? What happens if I have it like this?
Because we actually.
Always has to be anatomical, which makes the ulna on the pinky finger side and the radius on the thumb side. The ulna is always lateral to the body, and the radius is very, very important for us because we are going to learn how to find the radial pulse. Many of the pulses are named after the bone that they run along. So the radial pulse is named after the radius bone. And we're going to use that on almost every single patient we
So
meet.
what is the radius from start to here?
Goes from the wrist till the elbow.
As far as radius, we'll be able to see.
Besides the thumb.
As far as fracture, we'll be able to know which one is.
Very good. As far as the fracture, very good question. As far as the fracture is concerned, would we know which one? Well, I didn't say this before, but I'll say now for both. If one of the bones is sticking out through the skin, you'll know which one it is. But if not, we just call it a radius / ulna. There's no shortened version, but radius, I sometimes call it R/U, radius ulna. But yeah, there's no way to know.
The longest is humerus, the largest is...
Femur in the leg.
No, but I'm talking about the...
Oh,
Numerous.
the radius is bigger than the ulna.
So small.
The radius with the thumb.
The humerus is always the biggest.
Right?
Humerus is still the biggest, the largest bone.
Yeah, the bottom, the whole
The
body.
whole body.
The radius. Femur? What do you ask?
The radius. The humerus.
The humerus is the largest bone in the arm,
Yeah, the femur.
but the femur is the largest bone in the body.
Break now?
The radius is the largest.
Femur is for the feet.
Okay? Alright, here's some more things that you need to know. Guys, focus. Alright, here is the clavicle bone. It's called the collarbone in America. We call it the clavicle. Remember I spoke about the mid-clavicular line, right? One of the first things today. So the mid-clavicular line is an imaginary line that splits the clavicle in half. And we're going to need to know where that position is later on. So for now, here's the clavicle. It's also in the same position as rib 1. Rib 1. This is anterior view. How do I know it's anterior? Because there's a sternum. The sternum is anterior. Okay?
Clavicle is this, no?
Yeah, the collarbone, rib 1, it's right up the top. Yeah. Goes right over rib 1. Here is your humerus, or the humeral head, or the proximal humerus. You can use all these words, right? Why is it the proximal humerus up here?
Supposed to be here, there.
Right? Because it's close to the trunk. Very good. And this bone, which is a posterior bone, is the shoulder blade, but we call it the scapula. So the clavicle, the scapula, and the humerus make the shoulder.
What is posterior again? Sorry.
Posterior, the
back. The back, all right.
Again, listen. The shoulder isn't something, there's no piece of the body called the shoulder. It is a joint. It's a way 3 bones come together to allow for this motion, right? What are the names of the bones? The clavicle, which is up here. The scapula, which is posterior, the shoulder blade. and the humerus. Proximally.
The scalpel you would find in the front or the back?
Back, posterior. Clavicle is anterior, humerus is
So it's from the back.
lateral, and scapula is posterior. Okay?
From the back.
Here's the hand. Here's the hand. Remember, only this is the hand. Okay? Where you would wear the gloves. That's the only part that's called hand. They're made again of 3 different types of bones. Carpal, metacarpal, and phalanges. Ever heard of carpal tunnel syndrome?
Yes.
You ever heard of it?
You feel cold, right?
No, you feel it in the hand.
The hand.
You only feel it in the hand.
You don't feel one up?
No. What causes it? A lot of like computer work or wrist problems, sitting like this, wrist. That's carpal. Okay? So again, I don't think you'll be tested on this too much. I wouldn't worry about this too much. Want to pause?
When did we explain about the front and back, sitting in the post?
Pause.
Is that possible?
A minute.
It's
We'll
on.
finish this one till lunch.
Continue. To continue, we're in the middle of the musculoskeletal system. Until now, we just spoke about the skeletal system, but now we're going to add the muscular, which means the muscles that are involved with the skeletal system. It gives me an opportunity to introduce to you the 3 types of muscle that are found in the human body. Okay? So the first one we're going to talk about is skeletal muscle. Guess where you find skeletal muscle?
Skeleton.
On the skeleton. What's the skeleton? All the bones that we just discussed. So on every single bone is sitting muscle. Okay? What is the type of muscle? You must be able to know the difference between these 3 types of muscle. That is the main thing that you need to know. So, skeletal muscle is found where?
On the bones.
On the bones. Now here's where it gets a little interesting, a little more, you have to understand. We call this muscle voluntary muscle. It's on the board, voluntary muscle. What happens when you're a volunteer? Let's say you decide one day, I'm going to visit the old age home, I'm going to volunteer, I'm going to give food to the people over there, right? What did you do? Let's think about what did you actually do? You made a decision, you woke up in the morning, and you decided, I want to go and do something. I want to volunteer to help these people, whatever aspect it was. This didn't happen by itself, okay? You had to consciously decide to volunteer to do something. You made the decision. And this is really the understanding behind voluntary muscle. If I want to pick something up, I have to send a message that goes from my brain to my hand, let's say, pick this up. And all that is controlled by the brain, and the message goes to voluntary muscle. Okay? That's how the human body works when I decide to do something. If I want to punch him in the face, right? I have to make a decision to make the fist, to swing and punch him in the face. Right? Why did it all happen? Because
Voluntarily.
I volunteered to do it. And it was such a pleasure. Right? So I volunteered to do it. This is how you can understand voluntary muscle on a very simple level. Anything that you decide that you want to do, it's going to be voluntary muscle. Where is it found? On the skeleton. It's musculoskeletal muscle. Good. Now we have the opposite. Now we have something called smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is all the muscles that do things for you in your body without you having to contemplate and decide and cause it to happen. The easiest example is when you eat. When you eat, take your fork or your fingers and you put it in your mouth. Okay, voluntary, right? I chose to do that. What happens now? You swallow. Now it goes down the pipe. Do you have to concentrate? Okay, so stomach, I need you to divide the food up. I need you to bring out the fats and the sugars and the acids and splash this with that and this and take this over there and bring. You have to do that? Are you controlling that? Or is it happening in the background by itself? By itself. All those type of things, even something simple like the blood moving around your body, right? You're not controlling that.
The heart involuntary.
Forget the heart for a minute, but just the fact that the blood moves around. There's muscle around the different vessels. How's that happening? Well, we have smooth muscle, also known as involuntary. So you have to understand the difference, okay? Voluntary is skeletal muscle when you decide you're going to do something. Smooth muscle is stuff that happens seemingly on its own without you having to actually think about it and cause it to happen.
Blinking with the eyes, you say?
Well, let's not get into very specifics.
Subconsciously.
Some have both. Okay, because you can go like this and blink your eyes, and your eyes blink automatically without you wanting to do it. So there are muscles that have both, such as breathing. You can hold your breathing. You can breathe faster. You can breathe slower. But normally, how do you breathe? Are you concentrating? Usually it's breathing as well. So breathing is both, a mixture of both. These are two types of muscle. The third type of muscle is only found in one place in the body, and it's called cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle is special muscle that is only found in the heart. Cardiac muscle produces its own electricity. And later on in the course I will explain how the heart works, how the electricity, one thing and another. We'll do that later. Okay? Alright. New topic. So these are your three types of muscle. Make sure you know them. Make sure you know the differences. This is really important. Okay.
Nothing's found in the walls of muscular structures.
The smooth muscle, like your intestine, is a tubular structure.
Pipes.
Pipes.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, a lot of new words now. A lot of new words. Don't worry. It'll be okay. I'll use this picture to start with. We're going to discuss the respiratory system. The concept of the respiratory system is very simple. You need to get air from outside here to inside here. That's the concept. Alright? How it happens is a little more complicated. We're going to talk about it tonight, now, and then we're going to talk about it again in more detail. Let's talk about some of the structures. And yes, you need to know all of these names. Okay? Well, we'll start off with the nose and the mouth. How simple is that? Because that's the way air gets from outside here to inside here. So the journey starts with the nose and the mouth. These are natural holes that are found in the face. And this is we're able to bring in air. Behind the nose is a space over here called the nasopharynx. Okay, the nasopharynx. Behind the mouth is a space called the oropharynx. These are easy words. Naso for nose, oro for mouth. Very good. So the air comes in to here. Then we have over here a small flap called the epiglottis. Now, what I'm going to show you in a minute is that at the end over here, it's going to split into two pipes. One is going to be known as the trachea, that we call the trachea, or the windpipe, the air pipe. The other one is right behind it, more posterior, is called the esophagus or the food pipe. We don't care about the esophagus right now because it's not part of the respiratory system. We only care about the breathing. The job of the epiglottis is to make sure nothing gets into the trachea. The only thing allowed in the trachea is air. And this is a very important concept. A person that chokes, what's the definition of a person that chokes? Something that doesn't have to block, but somebody that got something in the trachea other than air.
Aspiration is similar to that?
No, respiration means breathing.
Aspiration, I said.
Aspiration is, yes, aspiration, they may not even choke, but aspiration means that it went all the way down the trachea into the lungs. Alright? So again, the job of the epiglottis is to allow nothing but air to enter the trachea. Now your trachea is extremely anterior. So much so that you can touch right here and you can feel your own trachea. It's very, very anterior, right at the front. The esophagus is right behind it or posterior to it. So we don't even have the esophagus probably shown here. All right.
We illustrate the trachea, don't have the word.
On the right side, on the lower area.
Trachea. Okay? The pipe is the trachea, this whole pipe. Now, let's talk about right over here, the top of the trachea. The top of the trachea, the area is called the larynx. Okay, so we have the pharynx, and now the larynx. Now what's important about the larynx is that you must know that the vocal cords, I'll explain a little bit what they are. The vocal cords are located in the larynx. What is the larynx? The very top of the trachea. Now the vocal cords are two cords that run along the top of the trachea. You cannot see them by opening your mouth saying, ah. Medics need to see them when we're going to intubate a patient. And so we use a special blade that lifts up the entire mandible and gets it out of the way. Okay, and so we can see all the way down to the vocal cords. Otherwise, they're impossible to see without a special tool. So you got to know this, that the vocal cords are located where? On top of the trachea in a space called the larynx. Fantastic. So now we're up to here. So we got the air from here, came in, nasopharynx, oropharynx, past the epiglottis, and now down into the larynx and through the vocal cords to go down into the trachea. Here's where the trachea starts, here's where the trachea ends. Okay, that's the trachea. Trachea is just a pipe, tube, and it allows air to enter and leave. That's all it does. Fantastic. The trachea splits into two large pipes. Okay? And that's shown over here. Okay? And these are called bronchi. Bronchi. Two large pipes. Each pipe will go into one of the lungs. Over here we have the right lung, and over here we have the left lung. Okay? So the trachea splits into two pipes called the bronchi. Remember when we did...
Bronchitis?
Yeah, we'll get... Let's just do anatomy, alright? Remember when we did anatomy of the circulatory system, and we used a word, eoles, at the end. Remember that word? We said we had arterioles and venules. So now we have the same word coming up. So you have these bronchi, which are very large air pipes. And then we have smaller ones. So a small bronchi is called a bronchiole. See? The same word. I told you we'll use it at least 3 times. So bronchioles, okay? And all this now is going on inside the lungs. This is all going on inside the lungs. Trachea, bronchi splits over here into lungs and goes into bronchioles. At the end of each of the bronchioles, we have a structure that looks like this.
On the test, everything.
Everything. Every bronchiole ends in these structures. Now, these structures are called alveoli. That's the small sacs, look like bunches of grapes. Okay? These are called alveoli. Should be written somewhere.
On the right.
Over here, okay, alveoli. See? But you can't see it here, you need to look at the
What's
blow.
that?
The clouds?
So we spoke about that's connected to the capillary?
Yeah.
The clouds or the...
No, they're little sacs that hold the air.
Why is one color and another one?
I'll explain. The alveoli look like this. The alveoli are surrounded by pulmonary capillaries, and that's why you see over here the blue and red. Remember, every capillary has a blue and a red side. In and out, oxygenated, deoxygenated, right? Remember, these alveoli are attached to the pulmonary veins and the pulmonary arteries, right? These are the pulmonary capillaries, but they're attached to the pulmonary veins and the pulmonary arteries. Remember, the arteries are bringing the deoxygenated blood from the right side of the heart, and the pulmonary veins are bringing the red oxygenated blood to the left side of the heart, right? We'll get back to that a little later. So, these are the main words that I want you to know over here. Now, this big muscle over here, which again we're going to talk about more, is the diaphragm. Okay? It's a muscle, and somebody asked me what splits the thorax from the abdomen. Where does the thorax end, the chest, and the abdomen start? And then that's right here by the diaphragm. So right under the lungs starts the abdomen or the abdominal cavity, and anything above the abdomen is the thoracic cavity. And we call it thoracic, thorax, and again, the spinal column are called the thoracic vertebrae. All the same word.
The diaphragm is connected to the lung?
No, they sit on it.
Fasciitis.
Okay? They sit on
Like
it.
a wall.
Okay? So, this is the same thing. Important for test is to know the difference between the upper and lower that we have here.
What is the difference?
So basically the larynx is the end of the upper airway and the beginning of the lower airway. The larynx is the cutoff. Okay?
Similar to the middle.
And the vocal cords is behind the larynx.
In the larynx. Top of the trachea. Okay, so here we have some words. The upper airway, mouth, nose, epiglottis, larynx. You could also add to this nasopharynx, oropharynx, and that would be about it. The lower airway starts with the trachea, the bronchi, the bronchioles, the lungs, the alveoli. That would be the lower airway. Okay? Okay, take a look at the picture. Let me explain to you this picture. I used to have this as an actual bottle that a student made for me, and now I found this online, so I don't have to bring the water bottle with the balloons. So, what's happening is like this. The water bottle is the thoracic cavity, the space, the thorax. The pink balloon is the lung, and this yellow balloon is the diaphragm. Okay? So watch what happens. The diaphragm gets pulled down. What happens to the balloon? Fills up with air. That's one of the ways that we breathe. We'll talk about many different ways. This is one of the ways that we breathe. As the diaphragm gets pulled down, air fills in the lung. Why does it happen? Well, that's because of pressure change. I don't know if you want me to explain that in detail, but pressure moves from high pressure to low pressure. Okay? So if there's higher pressure outside and lower pressure inside, when this pulls down, the pressure inside gets greater and the air will be filled into the lungs. Right now what you have to know is that when the diaphragm contracts, you breathe in. Okay? Yeah, you can't really feel it.
The belly goes up.
Yeah.
What is the reason for the diaphragm to contract?
Oh, well, the brain is making it. There's a nerve that controls from the brain. I'll explain to you why you breathe later.
Everything starts with the diaphragm, then the lungs.
They just do things up.
Okay? So, again, the larynx is the dividing point between the upper and lower. Later on, when we talk about illnesses and disease, we're going to want to focus on, is this upper, is this lower? We'll get to all that later on, not right now. The trachea, okay, so I've covered whatever I need to on this. We've covered this is showing you the bronchioles, all right, how they, move around inside the lungs. Diaphragm, and these muscles. Okay, let's take a look at this. You don't have this picture in your book. I made some updates since then. So look what's happening. You see the diaphragm?
Yeah.
See how when it comes down, the yellow comes in? And when it goes up, it pushes the air out. See that? Here, you have to understand there's two gases that are involved in breathing. One is oxygen, or O2, and that's shown as yellow, coming in. And the other one is CO2, or carbon dioxide, and that's going out. So this is just showing you what is going on. That every time you breathe in, oxygen rushes in, and every time you breathe out, CO2 is leaving. This is a large version of this small section, just showing you what's going on. But you see the diaphragm, see how it moves down? The pressure drops inside the lungs. Pressure drops when the space gets bigger, and so air rushes in from outside. All right? When it pushes up, the pressure goes up, and so the air goes out. And this is just showing you how breathing, one of the ways breathing works. What controls the diaphragm? It's getting messages from the brain. I'll talk about that soon. Why the brain is sending those messages.
That's ecology and anatomy, right? That's both.
The diaphragm has both, yeah. Okay, here's a definition, a word that you need to know. Okay, look at the picture. What's it showing? Showing oxygen coming in and CO2 going out. That's all it's showing. It's not a detailed picture like the other one. But you need to know what respiration is. Respiration, this is a definition. Like you could be tested. What is respiration? What does it mean? So what does it mean? It means the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the air. That's the definition. Getting oxygen in, getting carbon dioxide out. Only a person can really do respiration on their own. You could do it with a ventilator machine, but we cannot respirate for somebody in the field. I'll show you what we do soon. Breathing is controlled by the brain stem. There's a part of the brain called the medulla oblongata. Again, you will not be tested on that. But that's what controls breathing. The medulla oblongata, the medulla for short, is part of the brain stem. That tells the parts of the body that need to breathe, that's the control for breathing, right? Hypoxic drive is a backup system. I want to just talk about that very briefly. First of all, let's learn the word hypoxia. Very important word in EMS, very, very important word. Hypoxia is made of two words, hypo, oxygen. Hypo is a word you've got to know. Hypo means low.
What?
Low, low level. A low level of something. In medicine, we say hypo. We're going to use it quite a lot. The opposite of hypo is hyper. That means a lot. Okay? Hypo and hyper.
Hypo means low, hyper means a lot.
A lot. Yeah. Hypoxia, not hypoxic. Hypoxia means a low level of oxygen. We see a lot of hypoxia in this business. Alright? Hypoxia means a person has a low level of oxygen. It could be for many different reasons. Doesn't matter right now. Right now, we're going to learn the word. Hypoxia means low levels of oxygen. Okay? Hypoxic drive is a backup system if the main system isn't working. And we'll talk about the main system probably very soon. Okay, this you don't have either unless you get the new version. But this is showing you the pulmonary capillary and one alveolus. Okay? One alveolus, many alveoli. Okay? Look what's happening. You see the blue end coming from the pulmonary artery, and it's got CO2. The CO2 is getting dropped off into the alveolus, and the alveolus is going to give its oxygen to the red end, and the red side is going to be connected to the pulmonary vein, which is going to go back with the oxygenated blood. This is just a close-up of one pulmonary capillary and one alveolus. It's just to make it clear to you.
Yeah, but the veins are...
Yeah, but not the pulmonary vein.
All right.
I was waiting for that. Right? You know that. This is going to be connected to the pulmonary artery coming from the right side of the heart. This is going to be connected to the pulmonary vein going back into the left side of the heart. Okay? Here you have it again. This one's not moving, showing you the same idea. Okay? Here's the capillary. Okay? Here's the carbon dioxide. It's going out. Here's the oxygen coming in and moving on. It's the same thing, this one just not moving. One alveolus.
The alveolus are supplying the capillary here.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And how is the oxygen getting into the alveolus? Yeah.
Lungs,
The
no?
lung.
How? Yeah, but what's the whole holy healing? How's it getting there? Starts from the mouth and the nose. Goes into the nasonoropharynx, past the epiglottis, into the larynx, through the vocal cords, down into the trachea, goes out into the bronchi, splits into the bronchioles, then gets to the alveoli. It's that simple. I just said it's simple. Don't worry, it's hard. This is a hard lecture. I told you at the beginning. It's a lot of information, a lot of strange words. We're going to study. We're going to learn it. Every EMT knows this. Some more than others. Okay? Ventilation. So we had respiration. I told you that only a person can respirate properly themselves because you have to get oxygen into the alveoli, get CO2 out of the alveoli. What can we do to help a patient? We can ventilate. Ventilation is defined as getting air in and out of the lungs. Can we do that for somebody? Yes, we can.
If you back in, no?
Yeah, if you beg them, right? We'll talk about that. But we can do that. We can't be assured that there's gas exchange going on at the alveolus. We can't be assured of that. All we can know for sure is that air got in and air got out. This we can do.
When you put on oxygen,
Yeah, we'll talk about oxygen soon. Right now, ventilation. Getting air in and out. Two definitions that are definitely on test questions. You definitely need to know. I think you'll find these in the new version, if they're not in there. Okay? So, tidal volume. How much air you breathe in each time you breathe in and breathe out. It's called tidal volume. That's all.
The amount.
The amount. Right? Residual volume is after you blow out, you breathe out all your air, you still have air left in your lungs. Okay? You ever had the wind knocked out of you? You ever heard such a thing where somebody got a clap, got a bang, and like they couldn't even breathe?
That's the reason.
That's they lost the residual volume. So there's always residual volume in the air. It keeps the lungs open. Always a small amount of air that's left, and that's why even if you blow out with all your might, there's still going to be air left in your
It's
lungs.
similar to the other one we spoke, the O2 and the,
CO2.
what?
oxygen and air are separate things.
Yes.
So we're talking about air,
Yes.
just the air.
Okay? So again, tidal volume is how much air
Amount of air intake.
every time you breathe in and breathe out.
Residual.
Residual volume is what's left after you blow out forcefully.
What's the reason they're staying inside?
To keep the lung open. Okay? Normal breathing. Let's talk about normal breathing for a minute. So, when a person is breathing normally, the chest should rise and fall. Both sides of the chest together. Goes up, comes down. Together, equally. We'll talk about what happens when it doesn't. The breathing should be regular. It shouldn't look like a dog. You ever saw a dog panting like that? Really fast,
What
really...
does that mean?
We don't breathe like that. On a dog it might be normal, but for a human that's not normal. So the pattern of inhaling, exhaling, breathing in, breathing out should be very passive, very much, no work involved in it. When you see somebody working to breathe, we got a problem, all right? We need to fix that, okay? You should be able to hear breath sounds with your stethoscope. We'll teach you about that. So there may be some movement of the abdomen, a little bit of movement. Children definitely breathe with their abdomen, with their belly. Adults less. So small amount may be normal. Problems, labored breathing. When you see somebody really working hard, labored, working hard to breathe. Muscle retractions, when you take off their shirt and you see the ribs getting like sucked in, all the muscle around the ribs. That's a bad thing. Pale cyanotic cool damp skin. Let's talk about cyanosis. Big word, okay? Cyanosis. If anybody here is in printing, they know this word. It's a famous word in printing in color. Cyanosis means blue. So, I wanted to give you a fact you should probably write down. Hypoxia equals cyanosis.
Cyanotic is cyanosis.
Yeah. You can use both words. The patient was cyanotic, or the patient has cyanosis of the lips. You could say both.
What is cyanotic?
Cyanotic means blue, the color blue. and it equals, it's always connected to hypoxia. So somebody who is low oxygen may turn cyanotic. Okay? Same
What's the
thing.
word?
Hypoxia.
Hypoxia, low oxygen. So keep these words in your mind together at all times. Okay? Someone who is blue is cyanotic and they are hypoxic. Okay? And you literally can see somebody, they literally look blue. Alright? We'll talk about other skin problems later. Gasping breaths, agonal breaths. When somebody's about to die, maybe a geisis, literally on their last legs, they sometimes breathe like that. They give a gasp, and then nothing for 20 seconds, and then maybe they give another one. This, to us, is considered dead.
Testing is out.
Yeah. In, trying to breathe. Okay? This is to us a sign of imminent death, and we need to right away do something to help this patient. Okay? Again, it's not good breathing. Tripod is when somebody sits down usually and puts their head between their knees because it's helping them to breathe. Okay, like a tripod, yeah. Okay? We'll talk about it later when we do asthma and things like that. Okay, I'm going to run through the circulatory system very quickly. If you have questions, then you should stop me. But you should all know everything that I'm talking about. I'm doing this now as a review.
Well, in which picture?
17.
Okay?
18.
Of course, I'll add some new stuff that we didn't do. So here we'll start with this. Okay? We'll start with this. Here's a picture of the heart. Okay? You're familiar with most of the anatomy. Okay? Left ventricle, left atrium, right ventricle, right atrium. This, you know, this is the aorta. Okay? These are the coronary arteries. This is the superior inferior vena cava. You know all this stuff, right? You've done this. I hope. But one thing I didn't mention, that I want to speak about now, are veins and arteries that are actually found on the surface of the heart. These veins and arteries. So let's think for a minute. The heart, we know, has 4 chambers, has pipes coming in, going out. We're sending blood to the whole body. We're sending blood to the lungs. We're getting blood back from the lungs. The heart is a muscle. We learned already that every single tissue, organ, muscle in the body needs blood to survive. Where's the heart getting blood for the heart to survive? It's sending and pumping and bringing and going blood to the whole body. But none of that blood is getting to the heart. It's like 4 cups inside, and blood is coming in, going out. But how's the heart itself getting blood? Not from there. No. The superior and inferior vena cava are putting the blood into the right atrium, but it's not going to the heart. And what use is deoxygenated blood? None. Once it gets to the left side, it's in the left ventricle, everything gets squeezed out through the aorta. I know. Aorta. So what use is, so that's no use either. The heart has very special veins and arteries. We'll talk about the arteries predominantly. The heart has something called coronary arteries. There's probably a slide on it somewhere at some point. We'll do a lecture on heart and stuff later. Coronary arteries. They lie on top of the heart muscle itself. Just, I don't want to get into it now, when somebody has a heart attack, there is a blockage in one of the coronary arteries. The heart is usually still pumping fine. They are usually alive when we get there. So again, what is the definition of a heart attack? We'll do a lecture on cardiac emergencies. What is the definition? A blockage of one of the coronary arteries. Just to finish, the coronary arteries come off of the aorta. The first thing from the aorta, as soon as the blood goes into the aorta, the first place it goes is into the coronary arteries. What type of blood is that? Oxygenated blood. And that's how the heart itself gets its own blood. And we will talk about this at a later date.
That's some of the.
A small amount, right? Then it goes into the aortic arch. This is called the aortic arch. From here, goes up into the brain and the superior part, right? And then the aorta goes down through the thoracic aorta, the abdominal aorta, until it gets to the pelvis, and splits up into the iliac arteries, the femoral artery, and goes all the way down into the legs. Okay? But just I want you to understand how the heart gets oxygenated. All these words you know. Arteries, arterioles, veins, venules, and capillaries. Any questions? Fantastic.
What is a capillary?
Capillary is where a vein and an artery meet, and the exchange of gases happens there. Goes out, comes in.
Yeah.
How many capillaries is
Billion. So, what is the pulse? What is a pulse? We're going to do this on skill night. We're going to learn about taking a pulse. But very simple. The pulse is how many times the heart beats. How many times the heart squeezes. So now we can understand that if we put our fingers on the radial artery and we feel boom, 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 boom. We feel that. What are we feeling? We're feeling the heart pump. Why are we feeling that at an artery?
That's where it comes from.
It doesn't pump from an artery. But why do we feel it on an artery?
Because it goes
What is the artery connected to?
The coronary artery.
No, the blood goes there. The blood goes
to the heart?
To the heart. To the left ventricle. Right? And the left ventricle is the one that squeezes, that pumps. So that's why we can feel a pulse on arteries. Can we feel a pulse on a vein?
No.
No, I'm saying that.
goes back.
Only an artery. What is blood pressure? Blood pressure is something that we're going to deal with.
Wait, why not on veins when the veins also has blood that goes in?
The blood's in, but it's not connected to the left ventricle. It's coming back. The pump is only in the arteries. That's why I taught you what's connected to what, so we could build on it. Blood pressure, this is something that EMTs talk about all the time, deal with all the time, every patient. So what is blood pressure? Well, it's how much force the blood pushes on the wall of the artery. If an artery is full with blood and it's touching both sides and it's full, then you're going to have good blood pressure, right? If the artery is missing blood and it's not touching both sides, then you're going to have low blood pressure. If there's too much blood flowing through the artery and it's causing the artery to expand, then you're going to have high blood pressure. That's blood pressure.
Simple.
Very simple. On the simplest level. Now, there are two parts to blood pressure. Two numbers. And I'm going to teach you how to learn how to do it, what it means. The first number is the pressure when the heart is squeezing. So when the heart is squeezing, more blood is being pumped into the arteries. This is going to give you a higher number. So when the heart squeezes, we call this systole. Yes, you have to know this word. Systole. Systole means that the heart muscle squeezes. Squeeze, systole. Contracts. Okay? The opposite is when the heart relaxes. when the left ventricle relaxes and the left ventricle is able to fill with blood. When that happens, that is called diastole. So there are two parts to blood pressure, systole and diastole. Okay? Systole means it's squeezing, diastole means relaxing. Now it's referring to the left ventricle. Now, this is the picture that I think I showed you the other day. If you use my linear explanation of circulatory system, it's the color thing in the dark blue book. I'm not going through it. No. Okay? But this picture is in the notes. It'll be in the new version again, and you'll see it. Again, whichever way you prefer, but you have to learn this. You have to know this. What's going in, what's coming out, what's carrying what, who's going where. I suggest you use that page in the dark blue book, but it is entirely up to you.
The aorta is only connected to the left ventricle.
Yeah. This we know. This we know. I would not worry about this slide. I don't think it's something that EMTs really need to know. It's above your pay grade at this time. All right, very important. How much blood does the average human male have? Test question, always.
What?
How much blood does the average male have? The average man, how much blood does he have? The answer is 6 liters. Okay? Underline it, highlight it, you need to know
And a
this.
female.
They don't ask. Slightly less.
It's racism.
Alright, major arteries of the body. Because arteries are so important to us as EMTs, you're going to need to be able to find these arteries on humans. Obviously, we'll talk about this more during skill nights. These are all the arteries in the body, and you don't need to know these. Okay? So these are the ones that
Major artery.
circled, pointed out for you. So the aorta, where is it found? Where?
Left ventricle.
Left ventricle, very good. The pulmonary artery.
Right ventricle.
Yes, what's it doing?
It's sending the blood up to the lungs.
Very good. Oxygenated, deoxygenated. Very good, very good. The carotid. The carotid, there is one on each side of the neck. The carotid is what you will be using to decide, to determine if a patient is alive or dead. So that's an important one for you. Carotid. Don't feel them both at the same time, one at a time. Okay? That's taking, the carotids are coming from the aorta. Remember those pipes going up? Right. Those are going to your carotids.
How do you
Right?
check that? How do you see that?
Oh, we'll teach you. We'll teach you how to feel it. The femoral or the femoral artery is by the femur bone, right? So the inside groin. Remember, that's the aorta that comes down, splits into the iliacs, and then goes down into the femoral arteries. So these are big arteries still. There are 2 in the foot, and you will need to know both. I actually had a new EMT feel them for me on a patient just this past week. The posterior tibialis, or posterior tibial for short. What's posterior mean?
Back.
Back. What's tibial mean?
The bone.
The bone. bone, the tibia, right? So the posterior tibialis will be the back of the tibial bone. Is that medial or lateral? I forget.
Both fit, no.
The tibia.
Tibial is medial.
Again,
It's lateral.
the question.
Lateral. Tibia is lateral, right? So what does that mean? Where do I find this? Posterior tibial. What's it telling me?
It's outside the lower leg.
Towards the back, on the
Lower leg.
on the outside, the lateral side, right? Low there. Okay, so it's actually back here. Okay, we'll show you on skill 9. Dorsalis pedis. So pedis is Latin for foot. Okay, dorsalis. That was from dorsal that I told you
Not to look at.
don't really need to remember. Dorsal means the top surface. So where do you think your dorsalis pedis is?
Top of the foot.
Top of the foot. Excellent. See, it all makes sense. The brachial artery. All right, this one we haven't really spoken about. The brachial artery is an artery that we use on children a lot. Okay? And it's up here in the upper arm between the two big muscles. You can all try to feel it. Go right in the middle between the two muscles and push down till you feel bone.
Yes.
It's hard through a sweater. You need to push quite hard. Definitely not through a coat, right? Between, push down till you feel the bone, and you should feel a nice strong pulse. If not, don't worry about it right now.
Why about kids more than I know?
Because for kids, we don't use the carotid artery. It's very hard to find. They have big heads, small necks. You can hardly find it. Here is the next proximal one, and it's really easy to find. Okay? And the last one, the most common artery for EMS for every single patient, unless they're dead, is the radial. Where do I find the radial artery?
Yes, here.
Which side? Thumb, pinky, which side's it on? Thumb side, right? Why? Because I told you before. The radius bone is on thumb side.
Medial?
It's not medial, where's the radius bone? Lateral. Okay, these you need to know. All these arteries. Where they are, how to find them, will play during skill nights. This is just, I like the picture. You don't need to know. Capillaries. Somebody asked, what's a capillary? Here you go. It's a connection between arteries and veins. What happens there?
Exchange of oxygen.
Exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Very good. Oh, look at that. Billions in the body. Somebody wanted to know how many.
Actually, billions.
Veins.
Like Trump.
Veins. I think you know all about veins. Let's talk about the two biggest veins in the body. What are they called? The vena cava, inferior and superior. Very good. Here's the spleen. Just talk about it really quickly. We're not going to get into it very much detail. What you need to know, it filters the blood. But more than that, what you need to know is where is it? Where is it?
Left.
Left, not good enough.
Left
LQQ.
Left upper quadrant.
Yeah.
Gotta know that. Blunt trauma. Blunt means not with a knife, not with a gunshot. Blunt. Think of blunt as hit with a baseball bat. Blunt. Okay, that's blunt trauma. Not sharp or tearing or stabbing. Blunt. Okay?
That's one.
Can lead to severe internal bleeding. It's a solid organ. It's filled with blood. And that's really what you need to know. Okay, blood composition. I didn't talk about this yet. Very important. You need to know these 4 words, and you need to understand them. Get ready. Take a note. Get ready. This is really important stuff. I'll start with red blood cells. Red blood cells. Ready?
Yes.
Red blood cells carry gases around the body. Okay? Blood is made of 4 things. All you need to know are these 4 things. Okay? Obviously, there are millions of other things inside. You need to know these 4 components that make up blood. I'm starting with RBCs, or red blood cells. And what is the function?
Carry gas around the body.
Carrying, no,
Gases.
carry gases. Okay? Which 2 gases do we care about? Oxygen and carbon dioxide. Perfect. So this. Now, I once saw a question on what is the Greek name of red blood cells, and the word is erythrocytes. Erythro is red, cyte is cell. I've seen it.
What is site?
Cell. Red blood cells, erythrocytes. Okay? So, but the main thing is to know the function. What do red blood cells do? You'll be tested on this every single test. On all these 4. They will mix them up.
What kind of questions?
What's the function of red blood cells?
Carry gas around the body.
Okay. Easy.
Which guys?
Which gases?
Ask me which gases?
They may. Yeah. Okay, easy. Next.
O2 and CO2.
Exactly.
Yeah. Next. The only thing that makes blood red are the red blood cells. Understand that. Everything else is clear or white. It's about 50% of the blood, 40-50% of the blood is made up of red blood cells. Okay? Inside there is the hemoglobin. You may have heard that word. Hemoglobin carries iron, carries the gases. We'll discuss it. All right. Next thing, WBCs. Or white blood cells. They fight infection. Just write it down. Fight infection. You must know the function of all these 4 things. Okay? Also known as leukocytes. Leucos means white. Alright? Okay? Leukocytes.
So when you have an infection, you have high white blood cells.
High white blood cells. Yes, that's how doctors know you have an infection.
WBC they call it.
That's the only way they know. They don't do any magic. They get some blood. They say, oh, your WBCs are high. You have an infection. It's that simple.
Why it's high? Because it's fighting.
Because fighting infections, so the body produces more. Yeah.
How do they know which infection?
No.
They don't know.
Then they have to use already a little bit of brain.
They have to figure out.
But to know that there's an infection, blood test, CBC. Next, let's do plasma. Plasma is the liquid, the fluid that makes blood a liquid. Everything else is solids. Okay? The only liquid is plasma. Plasma is again about 45-50% of your blood. It's just the water, the fluid that holds it all together.
So plasma is the fluid holds everything
The
together.
fluid that holds it together, that makes blood look like the blood you've seen. Blood flows, right? Blood is a liquid, but 3 out of the 4 things are solids.
The white blood cells are small now.
Yeah, tiny. The tiny.
Where's CBC you said?
CBC, complete blood count. But that's not negative.
Plasma is the fluid.
What is the platelets?
Everybody got these 3? Platelets.
Plasma again?
Plasma is the fluid, the liquid
That
that carries everything together. Keeps everything as a liquid.
which means blood is really...
Blood is really 3 solids. Yes.
And
Plasma makes it all into a liquid.
Not bestellen, not bestellen.
No.
When blood dries,
Water.
the plasma
Like
goes
water.
away.
Right?
When blood dries, the plasma goes away.
Yes. That's actually a very good point. And when I talk about burns, I will mention that when somebody gets burned, the thing that burns up is the plasma. Yep.
Blood can go.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Last thing are platelets. This is the smallest amount in the body. And platelets, you need to know one word: clotting. Clotting. When somebody bleeds, the body sends platelets to the site, and it starts to fix the bleed, or at least attempt to stop the bleeding.
That's why it's called clotting.
Clotting. So you must know these 4 parts of blood, and you must know their names and their functions. Okay? So at any time I can ask you, what do red blood cells do? You're going to tell me they carry gases. What do platelets do? Clots. What do white blood cells do? Fight infection. What's plasma? Liquid fluid holds it all together. That's it. Simple, simple, simple. This slide is just talking again about blood pressure. Remember, there are 2 parts. There's the systole and there's the diastole. Systole means squeeze, so the pressure will be higher. Diastole means relax. The left ventricle is filling. It says here, okay, ventricle fills with blood. It's called diastole. When we report our blood pressures, we talk about 2 numbers. We talk about systolic and the diastolic. These words come from systole and diastole. Okay? So I want you to know where the words come from. People will say, oh, it has a systolic blood pressure of 60, for example.
He's the higher number.
That's the high number, but that's really low.
Right.
So that's a problem, and they couldn't get a diastolic number because the systolic is too low. So then you have to say a systolic blood pressure up. When we talk about blood pressures in EMS, we're always going to focus on the systolic. Now, many doctors, especially cardiologists and other specialty doctors, they focus on the diastolic.
Right.
I'm going to be honest with you, we focus on the systolic. Yeah, well, I don't know exactly what the reason is. I know why we focus on the systolic, because it's easier to get. There are 2 ways of getting it, which will teach you, and we can learn so much just from the systolic. What we need to know, we can know from the systolic. We don't have to go into the diastolic. However, we want both, and there are things that we will do with the knowledge of having both. Okay?
The difference will always be the same. Moves up in unison.
Very good question. So he asked a very good question. If they move together in unison,
There's also a number in the middle.
there is a calculation called the pulse pressure. The pulse pressure is equal to the systolic minus the diastolic. So let's take a textbook case. Textbook case is 120/80. That's the famous textbook blood pressure. Obviously in America nobody has that, but let's say, right, that would be the best blood pressure you could have. Now 120 minus 80 gives me a pulse pressure of 40. So that means that a normal pulse pressure should be around 40, which means if somebody is 160, then we expect them to have a diastolic of about 110, 120 to meet that, okay, pulse pressure. Now, if you want to get into this in more depth, there's a much better number that we use, and it's called the MAP, the mean arterial pressure. It's only used by medics, it's only used by certain medics that understand it, not even all medics get it. Doctors certainly use it a lot more. And again, there's a calculation of what we call the MAP, the MAP, the mean arterial pressure. I don't teach it in EMT school. It's not necessary. But yes, there are so many numbers and so many calculations and so many things that you can get from simple blood pressure. But EMTs usually will move together. But there are times when I will want you to calculate the pulse pressure, which is easy, because all you got to do is minus one number from the other, and that's an easy thing to do. And there's a time when I'll talk about where they start moving together, and you'll notice it by making that calculation, and you'll see that you may be able to diagnose a certain problem. All right?
How
But
do
very
which
good.
number is good and which number is not good? You can also learn
We'll
that.
talk about it. Okay, this is a big word. We're going to do a lecture on it, I think, later on this afternoon, called perfusion. So I don't want to get into it now. All I want to say is, repeat, that every single part of your body, every tissue, organ, cell needs oxygen. Okay? That's all I want to say. And that's called perfusion. We're going to do a lecture on this. Here, for those of you that don't know or not sure yet what a capillary is, we have here an artery, splits off into arterioles, right? And here we have capillaries. This is the red end, the oxygenated end, and it's connected directly to a deoxygenated end. So what happened to all this blood?
Yeah, where's it going?
Went into the organ or the tissue. The organ needed oxygen, so it took the oxygen. What did the organ have as a waste product?
CO2.
CO2. So the CO2 comes back into the capillary. This is now the blue or the deoxygenated end. And that goes back
Into the
into
vein.
a vein. So I think it's pretty clear now. Capillaries, veins, arteries. This should be very, very easy to understand.
What's the topic of the
The end from the arteries. Get the
Function of blood. We spoke about all this already. Yes? Clotting, fighting infection, transporting gases. Okay? So you know what does what, yes?
Nutrition is also the blood cells.
Yeah. Okay, nervous system. We're going to just touch on it really quickly. Now pick it up again in a later lecture. Nervous system. Remember when we did muscles earlier today? I told you that some muscles work because you choose that you want to do something voluntary. And some muscles are working. There you go. So the central nervous system is what controls both. Now I'm going to show you how those are controlled. So the first thing is you've got to know this acronym, CNS, or Central Nervous System. This is always a test question. What is in the central nervous system? What makes a central nervous system? And you're very lucky, there's only two things. There is the brain, there is the spinal cord. I haven't mentioned yet the spinal cord. I have mentioned the spinal column. Spinal column is a bunch of rings, and we'll, again, in a later lecture we'll do it. All its function is really to protect spinal cord. And that's the spinal cord that goes up from spinal column, goes all the way up into the brain. And most of the functions of the body are controlled from the brain, sending messages out through the spinal cord, and then from there throughout the whole nervous system. Okay? The PNS, peripheral nervous system, you don't need to know as much about this, is everything else. Everything else in the nervous system is called PNS, but this they're going to test you on. What is in the CNS? What is in it?
Brain and spinal cord.
Brain and spinal cord. All right, so a few things here that I want to point out. Voluntary activities are regulated by the somatic nervous system. Okay? It's not a physical thing. This is a functional thing now. The somatic nervous system controls. So every time I say, I want to pick something up, there are somatic nervous system in the brain. It's going to send messages down through my arm to my hand and say, pick this up. It's controlled by the somatic nervous system. That's easy. All the other stuff is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. Now this word sounds like automatic, autonomic. This is the involuntary stuff. This is what's going on in the background. This is the stuff that's going on that you are not necessarily controlling. Okay? Breathing, digestion, etc., etc. All the functions of the body. This is the involuntary, or the autonomic nervous system, is split into two. Sympathetic and parasympathetic. How do they work? They work like this. The sympathetic nervous system is what causes you to run, to jump. Anything that speeds you up is caused by the sympathetic. We call it fight or flight. Fight or flight means anything that gets you up and running and moving and makes you do something fast is sympathetic. The opposite is the parasympathetic, and that's called rest and digest. When you go to sleep, you don't want to be jumpy and running, and that's why they say not to drink caffeine before you go to sleep. Because caffeine works on the sympathetic nervous system. Caffeine enhances the sympathetic nervous system and makes it go more. It's a drug. Alright?
What about rest and?
Digest. Digest means to process the food. Most drugs, whether they're legal or illegal, not getting into that, we just call them drugs. Most drugs work on one of these two things, and they can be 4 ways. You can increase one of them or decrease one of them. So there's 4 ways that these drugs work. As you get into medicine, not necessarily in this course, but as you get into it, certainly if you any of you go to medical school, you will learn a lot about the autonomic nervous system, how it works, how the drugs affect the body, what's blocking, what's pushing, what's happening. The easiest one, though, is to think of coffee, of Mountain Dew, Coke, right? All these, what do?
Sugar.
It's not so much the sugar, it's the caffeine.
What do they do?
It's the caffeine.
So what do they do?
What do? They increase sympathetic tone. Sympathetic makes you fight or flight. Makes you jump and at it, jumping. Okay? This is one simple idea of how a drug works. Directly on the central nervous system. Okay?
What are the rest?
Don't worry about it. The skin. The skin is the largest organ of the body. What does it do? Let's talk about 2 big functions of skin. It protects from the environment, but I think the most important one is this. Regulates body temperature.
Is what?
The skin. New topic. The skin regulates body temperature. And that is a very important thing to remember. We're going to get back to it. Alright, the skin. Skin has numerous layers. Yes, you got to know that. Layers of the skin. All these pictures are going to be in color in your new books, and they're all in your textbooks. You must know the names of these 3 layers, all right? The outer layer of skin. The outer layer of skin, the skin that you see whenever you look at someone's face, is called the epidermis. The outer layer of skin is known as the epidermis. The next layer underneath, and these are very microscopically thin. They don't look like this, okay? You understand that, right? The next layer that's right underneath the epidermis is the dermis. Dermis.
Same thing.
Same right. Epidermis means on top of the dermis. Okay? And the lowest layer is called the subcutaneous is more inside. That's close to the muscle. Here's your muscle.
Sub-Q?
Sub-Q, we write it S-U-B and the letter Q.
I guess
Sub-Q.
they have to go through all three or more.
Say again?
They have to touch your vein or whatever.
Oh, if we need to get in a vein, I gotta go through all three.
Right.
Sure. Here the blood vessels are gonna be underneath here. Okay?
Sub-Q. This is best as you do.
Alright, for now that's all you need to know. Here you go, here's some words for you to read. What would I highlight over here?
The epidermis.
Capillary.
I would highlight this. Insulation and absorb physical trauma. Meaning, just like you have shock absorbers in the back of your cars, okay? Well, that's the subcutaneous layer. Insulation, underline, and shock absorbers.
I thought this is physical charms.
Yeah, it does. Same thing, shock absorption.
What is the dermis?
Dermis is the middle layer.
How do you call it?
Dermis.
Dermis.
Okay? And the top is the epidermis. That's the one you see. Know the order, know the
Where
names.
does it say the shot?
What's the dermis?
It says absorb most physical trauma.
What's the epidermis?
Okay?
The layer up there.
Shock observer.
Shock observers by the sub-Q.
Absorb shock.
By the sub-Q, you have the shock.
That's the first thing after the muscle?
Yes. Okay? Skin is the largest organ. It also has nails and hair, all part of the integumentary system. That's a big word. I don't really
The
think you
main
need to
thing what
know
skin
it.
does is that regulates the body temperatures.
The
The
what?
skin.
Yeah, it regulates body temperature. Okay? All right. Endocrine system. You have in your body 7 special organs. The job of these organs is to produce something called hormones. Should be on the board somewhere. Hormones. Okay? The job of the endocrine system is to produce hormones. The one we will deal with at length later is the pancreas, and it produces the hormone called insulin. All right? I mentioned it earlier. It's right there. I didn't know if it was there, but it is. I forgot. We will deal with the others at another time, but that's the job of the endocrine system. There are 7 endocrine glands. Here they are. Again, the only one that we're going to really go into in EMT school is the pancreas, and it produces insulin. We'll talk about it at length.
They wouldn't ask questions about the thyroid, about other stuff?
Unlikely. No. The digestive system, very, very important system. All right? All you need to know is it goes in here and comes out there. All right? They don't ask any questions on it. I've never seen any questions on it. We spoke about the esophagus. Okay, this is this anterior or posterior to the trachea? Posterior to the trachea. We know where the stomach is. Where? Left side. Good. All this other stuff. Where's the liver? Okay, right upper. Gallbladder is right underneath it. I wouldn't worry about anything else. Digestive system. Here are your quadrants. Here are your quadrants. Here is the umbilicus. Right upper, left upper, right lower. Here are the pictures. Where's your spleen and your stomach, liver, spleen. See, all this is up here. Here's your liver.
Where's the gallbladder?
Gallbladder is that green thing right there. Okay? And then over here, the lower, your appendix and stuff. But again, you don't really need to get into that. Know this stuff. It's the upper.
Everything is shown in a male thing. Is the female really different or no?
Exactly the same.
Exactly.
We'll give you some females also. Okay? Here the quadrants, right? We spoke about those names. We're good. Digestive system, again, just to recap, we spoke about that. Urinary system, all right? This is important for you to know, but again, very, very rare that there'll be any questions on this. Understand how this works. You have two kidneys. Two kidneys, they are retroperitoneal. They are behind the peritoneum. Peritoneum is the lining that has all the front organs are inside this bag, if you like, this bag called the peritoneum. All right? Retroperitoneum means behind this bag called the peritoneum. So they're in the back, the posterior. Everybody has two kidneys like this, and then two pipes that go from the kidneys to the bladder. And these are called ureters. You will not be tested on this. This is just for your own knowledge. People get kidney stones, renal colic in the ureters very often. This is the bladder. From the bladder to outside the body is called the urethra. You only have one urethra. Same for male and female. Here you go. Nicer picture. Kidneys, ureters, bladder. Here's the prostate, which hopefully none of you are hearing about yet. You know, you got till a little bit later in life till you start hearing about the prostate problem. And here's the urethra, which allows the urine to exit the body. No. Here's the male reproductive system. In EMT school, we do not get into this at all. The female reproductive system, we're going to spend quite a lot of time on this later on in the course when we do OBGYN. All cells require oxygen. How long can a cell be without oxygen? 4 to 6 minutes. 4 to 6 minutes, cells will begin to die. Take a note of that. Something you need to know.
So 25 the cell die.
How many, again,
4 to 6 minutes.
how many liters of blood? In the rest of the day?
6.
But when the cells die, then when the
4 to
person
6
dies,
minutes.
we have a space.
Right.
Again,
The cells die, then the...
if it's the brain, then yes. If it's the pinky toe, then no.
That's where it gets tough.
Couple of words here that I'm just going to point out. Again, I don't know if you'll be really tested on this, but it's really, you should know. Guys, just focus. We're almost done with this section. Aerobic and anaerobic metabolism. That's what I want to talk about now for a couple minutes. When the body does what it's supposed to do, and it uses oxygen like it's supposed to,
Right.
this is called aerobic metabolism. You may have heard of aerobics, right? You may have heard of that, people jumping around doing Kreisschluss. Doesn't matter. It's not an important word over there. What's important is to understand when the body functions in a healthy, proper way with oxygen, this is called aerobic metabolism. The opposite is if a person gets sick. And now the body is functioning with less than optimal amount of oxygen, not the correct amount. If that happens, that is called anaerobic. An means without. Anaerobic.
What is that?
This is a bad way for the body to function. And this can produce something in the body called lactic acid. We're going to learn later about a problem called sepsis or septic shock.
It's anaerobic?
Yeah. So this is a buildup of lactic acid in the body, and you'll understand later that this is where it came from, the body not getting enough oxygen to do its thing.
When a person's hypoxia, it's confused hypoxia.
We'll get to it. Vital signs. We're going to learn on a skill night about vital signs. Everybody needs to have a watch with a second hand. Digital doesn't work, and the stopwatch also really doesn't work very well. So you should try to get a cheap $5 watch or $1 watch, doesn't matter, with a second hand. It's important. Everybody has to have some way of counting 30 seconds or a minute. This we gave you, this we gave you, this will show you. BSI we spoke about, and pen obviously you need for class.
What is BSI?
Body safety.
Body substance isolation. You've really got to review the lectures after the lecture so you know. Okay? Vital signs. We'll just talk about this really quickly. Skin, we look at CTC, which stands for color, temperature, and condition. We will do this on the skill night. Pulse is the heart rate, rhythm, and quality. There are 3 things we need to look at. Eyes, we look for pupils, equal, round, reactive to light. We'll talk about that. Respirations, or RR, respiratory rate. Rate and quality, how often a person breathes, and what does it look like. Mental status, this we'll do again many times over. Everybody has to fit into one of these 4 boxes. Are they alert, verbal, painful, or unresponsive? And blood pressure will be systolic and diastolic. These are the vital signs. We will learn about them. We will go into them in detail. All right, this is something you've got to learn. So I mention it now, and we will mention it again, but you've got to learn this right away. This is called a sample history. This is a bunch of questions that you need to ask every single patient that you encounter. And you need to learn this acronym, it's called SAMPLE, just to remember the questions that you need to ask. So, I'll just explain what each one means. S, sign and symptoms. First of all, you can take a note, the difference between a sign and a symptom, something the state always likes to ask. What's the difference between a sign and a symptom? A sign is anything the EMT sees. Okay? So if somebody has blood pouring out of their arm, that's a sign. You see that. A symptom is anything the patient tells you. I have a headache. That would be a sign or a symptom? Symptom. They told you. There's no way you could know that on your own. So if you can see it, smell it, hear it as the EMT, it's a sign. If they have to tell you, it's a symptom. Allergies. Allergies. We always ask, are you allergic to any medications? Are you allergic to any foods? Okay, very simple. Medications. What medications are you prescribed and taking? You need to know.
When are you asking these questions?
Every patient. I'll explain to you when another time. Right now, every patient, you've got to ask these questions. Past medical history. Okay? This means, have they had any surgeries? What have they been diagnosed with? All right? Sometimes they tell you that when they were 4, they had a hernia repaired. Okay. The women will always tell you about the pregnancies and the births. Again, not really what we want to know. But take it. Whatever they tell you, you take.
Last meal.
All right? Last thing that they ate, when was it, and what did they eat? Okay, these are the things that we want to know. I'll explain why on another day. And events prior to the episode. What's going on in their life? This has nothing to do with the fact that, they were jogging and they fell over. So obviously the events prior were that they were jogging. I don't care about that. That I know already. What's going on? Social, emotional problems, work, family, pressure, stress. These are the things that I want to know in the events prior.
Will they ask you about this, you think?
The test?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Like what?
What's the question?
What means allergies and the A from the sample? What means?